Welcome back, Wrench Nation. Want a big shout out, sending our regards, the whole Evett family, to Todd Ramsey. Todd Ramsey's been a contributor of the show. We met some time ago. Greg, you've known him. Susie. Mm-hmm. He's battling some health concerns, and so we're sending him big up prayers, and hang in there, stay strong. And we miss you, brother. Hang in there. We're going to have you back in the studio. Don't worry.
We will for sure.
We got a mic waiting for you. All right, so what you may not be waiting for, you may run the heck out of there, is you stroll in for an oil change, and you get your inspection. Hopefully it was nice and organized, a digital inspection, and you're told you need fluid flushes. Like, you constantly hear this, fluid flushes. Susie, do you ever get anybody coming in that says, Susie, you know, I love you and everything, but the car wash up the street, Circle K guy, my elevator man told me, I need fluid flushes.
Oh, yeah.
How do I know I really need them?
Well, you know what? There's a couple things we'd have to look at. We'd have to find the history of the vehicle, ask them if, any of the flushes have been exchanged before.
Right. And for sure, like, back to maintenance manual.
Owner's manual.
And then we're going to talk further about that. But I figured we start with engine oil.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of you are like, I'll change the oil whenever I say so. And I want you to look up Toyota class action lawsuit.
I read some of that.
Yes. Toyota, and don't quote me word for word, but some of you are like, I'm going 10,000 miles with my oil. Some of you were told that by the used new car salesperson back, and this is 2007 or so. Well, a lot of those motors end up having sludge, and they ended up needing a motor right after warranty, conveniently.
Absolutely.
So the oil change, I cannot tell you guys, Susie, you get a lot of situations that could have been avoided in the garage because of the lack of.
Oh, yeah, the changing, yeah.
And a lot of you saying, well, Frank, that's all you mechanics do is you tell us we need to do our oil change. You want to put us out of business? Listen to what we say. Honestly, that's the truth of it.
One of the most important things to do.
If you stay timely with your oil service, you'd probably put some of us out of business because guess what? We won't have the repairs that stem from your neglect. So if you really hate your mechanic, stay consistent. That's
right. Stay away from them.
We won't be out of business, but you get what I'm saying. So engine oil is critical. And Justin, go ahead and play. We're going to do a little Jeopardy. I think we have some fun.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to ask you a question. As it pertains to engine oil, this question is for Susie Sockets. Let me hear this Jeopardy. This is a dance floor classic. All right, Susie, I got a question for you.
All right.
My check engine light will come on, and it tells me it's time for an oil change. Is the check engine light responsible for an oil change?
So this is a trick question.
True or false?
I'm going to say what is false.
All right. You're right.
But
I should have put a maybe in there.
But there are some check engine light codes that actually do require to start with an oil change.
This is correct.
Mm-hmm.
If your oil level's low, let's talk about this because I would say the logic for you listening, you guys have a maintenance light or bell and whistle.
Separate from a check engine light.
Separate. Now that's cyclical. That means it's time to come on. It's like that little baker oven chime. Ding! 60 seconds, pizza's ready. 3,000 miles, the light comes on. It tells you whatever, or 6,000 or whatever, some depending on what the engineers decided to do with the cyclical. The check engine light typically does not first and foremost tell you that's when you need an oil change. Because what I see a lot of you doing is you'll come in casually, sipping your Mai Tais. Oh, I just need an oil change. My check engine light's on. Now, what you're saying, Susie, I'm going to allow you to explain that because you're a rock star. The engine light could come on with an oil issue.
Correct. But now you're going to ask me what, huh?
Well, let me talk to the technician.
Come on, Frank.
If your engine oil is low, will the check engine light come on?
Yes.
Right. So that could be an indication, depending on the situation of the vehicle. I just don't want you listening to take the check engine light casually, because guess what, people? Just like the oil change, if you take it casually, You keep us in business because now we're repairing big money repairs. So put us out of business. If the check engine light comes on, you take that serious, but that engine oil just as well, obviously is going to keep that engine from sludging. You know, that oil breaks down to a point where it's like honey. Greg, you ever pull a dipstick and you're like, dang, this sucker's sticky.
Yeah, it's all gross and gets
Sticky,
all over
icky.
the place.
Now you don't even have a dipstick.
I know.
Some of these cars. A lot of you get upset. You think you got a defect from the manufacturer. Like, this car don't come with, their truck don't come with a dipstick.
I got to admit, I was embarrassed when I asked where the tranny dipstick is on my new truck.
Oh, because there isn't one.
wasn't
Hey,
there.
we've danced with it in the
Yeah.
garage. I remember there was a transition. We started seeing these. The Europeans have been doing it for a while. And there's nothing like a technician. You're like, wow, why is Bob taking so long trying to find that? You know, he's digging, you know. So engine oil, you've heard it. Now, what I will tell you is this. The big question then becomes, all right, Frank, great. I want to keep timely. What interval should I have? Now, I'll speak to the desert, Arizona, Phoenix particularly. And actually, I'll speak for a lot of you. Most of you are not driving normally. Not meaning you're not normal. It means that you're stopping and going. You're in traffic. That's severe duty. So you want to at least once, twice a year is what I say. Remember, people, engine oil change. I get that 6-year-old to do that mechanically. However, the inspection is what you want to know. So don't treat that engine oil like you would a cheeseburger drive-through service experience. You want somebody to inspect the vehicle. So that's what I say about engine oil.
Yes.
Greg,
I like it.
have you anything to add to engine oil, Greg? Do you feel like the world could be a better place with proper intervals of oil changes?
It would just make the world so much easier if everyone followed their maintenance.
All right,
Yeah.
the next big
I do
one.
have something with engine oil, though, if I can.
Give us a story.
So, after an oil change is performed on your vehicle, some vehicles actually just have like you know how you reset the engine oil light? And if we set it for like 5,000 miles, sometimes it'll come on sooner. Sometimes it'll come on later, per se, because some vehicles are manufactured with just a one interval, it's
Right.
reset, right?
So what I would advise is
Your sticker.
well, not
Follow
only the
that sticker, too.
but a good outfit will get you on the schedule. What we would do in the garage, and a lot of you admired this. I felt like, well, we're just going to annoy people, but we pre-book your appointment.
Oh, yeah.
So if you came in June, we knew sometime December, whatever, 6 months, we were going to remind you, bribe you, buy you whatever you want to. Anyway, we would have you come back into the shop for another
Right.
service, and most people are happy with that.
Right. And those calls that come in when that reminder goes out is two things. I don't need an oil change because I haven't gone that many miles. And number two, I don't need an oil change because my oil light reminder isn't on.
Now, this is a good question. Again, I go back to normal and severe as practice, and it's going to be a hard swallow. A lot of you are like, Frank, you didn't engineer this vehicle. Why?
Right.
Why are you're a liar? Why are you telling me that light tells me everything? It tells me how much weight I lost. It tells me what I need to do. And all I can tell you is the interval, a safe bet, 6,000 miles. I don't want to see a lot of you doing 10,000 miles. We've seen what oil looks like at 10,000 miles. Now, if you're the one odd, you got all the special treatment, depending on how you drive, maybe so. But if you do that in a continued fashion, you're going to sludge. It's gonna turn into like brownies. So 6,000 miles is a safe bet, and that's full synthetic. Some of you argue, I just need semi-synthetic. It's less money, of course, and you're going to be in there more frequently. But the bottom line, I think, either way, get the concept of changing oil fluid out of your mind and start thinking about, I need to pit stop and have somebody look at my vehicle. Then they're going to change the oil.
Right.
Remember that, because a lot of you running around with stuff, man, I didn't even know that was happening. Of course you did it. You shouldn't. You're not a professional. You didn't have somebody look at it. So wouldn't you want to know that? So, I don't have a direct answer as to why, other than that's how it's built into the vehicle.
Right.
I've had several Cadillac owners, they're like, and they would come in 6-7 months later, and I just cringed.
Yeah.
Because that's hard on us, because we don't want to argue with you. Like, okay, it's your vehicle, but we're going to show you a few case examples. I do revert back to this Toyota class action lawsuit, but that's a good point you bring up.
Thank you, Frank.
Justin, is your oil change due currently in the situation of your vehicular hoopties?
My car?
Yeah, are you due?
Yeah, my thing's flashing. But funny story about
Wait
the
a minute,
indicator
you got
light.
lights flashing? It's not a UFO, man. You got to... Seriously?
It's weird. It comes on like when I brake, but then it'll like go off when I accelerate.
That's a different... Is
Your
it brake
oil light?
Not the oil light.
The oil light.
It's probably lower. You got an oil pressure issue.
So I'm gonna... But I have a Kia, so there's all kinds of issues with
Kias
that
are
oil.
like those tanks we're sending out at Ukraine. They're bulletproof. Don't
Right?
worry.
So a funny story about...
No, but you need to check the engine
I
oil
will.
level.
I will. Our recruiter downstairs, her daughter's starting to learn how to drive. And she's like, Mom, the lights on the dashboard, but they're not lights, they're emojis. The emojis are flashing at me.
Oh my gosh.
She's like, honey, those are not emojis.
How
You know
funny.
what? I say let her call those emojis. At least she's paying attention.
Right.
Yep.
At least
That's
she's looking
true.
at them.
She's not trained to put black tape on it and cover it up.
That is too funny.
But yeah, so remember that. Brake fluid is a big deal. We're going to go to brake fluid. It's essential. Essentially, it's hydraulic fluid. It allows you to brake nice and firmly. It's like a comfortable mattress. You know it's comfortable every time. Until the brake fluid gets dirty, grimy, and you have some contamination. Now, I want to point something out. If you walk into a garage or dealership with this statement, they may want to hire you. What is brake fluid? It's hygroscopic. What does that mean? Brake fluid's designed to fight what?
Moisture.
Moisture. And so if the brake fluid is neglected, that's a problem because you're going to feel it. Now, what symptoms could you have? You can have a little brake pedal fade. That pedal is just kind of...
Spongy.
It's not sinking to the floor all the way because that could be another hydraulic issue.
Right.
But it just doesn't seem to grab like it should. Like I said, it's like that mattress spring that's popping at you. If I could use that as an analogy.
So the braking system is a hydraulic system, but you're talking about hygroscopic.
Hygro, moisture.
That's what it is, moisture?
It fights moisture.
Can you use it in a sentence? I'm kidding.
Yeah. Brake
question.
fluids are hygroscopic. Period. That's all you need to know. That's the word of the day. Hygroscopic, not hydro as
No, like
it's
hydraulic.
with a G.
Yes.
I don't have the definition as
The
to why they
OG.
chose the G over the D. But the point is, moisture is the enemy. Now, how you want to know in your mind? Some of you want to not just be told, but you feel more confident, as you should, if you're advised on how these things are actually tested. They are test strips. And if you're inclined to do this, Justin, if you want to do this on the weekend, you go to your local parts house, you get a little test strip, you dip it in the fluid like it's ice cream or what have you, and you pull it out and it will change a color. And that color will dictate, I forget what color, it'll tell you if it's time to be replaced. We use them in the garage. You can also use a voltmeter. Not commonly used. Check this out. 0.3 of a volt, 0.3. So you take your positive lead, put it down in the juicy juice of the brake fluid, you ground it out to the master. As long as it's not aluminum, you got to find ground. And if you can measure above 0.3, it's time to change.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I didn't either. That was a Jeopardy question.
It would have
we didn't-
been, but I have a Jeopardy question. I know I wrote this down, but no, that testing, my understanding, is more common in Europe because we don't use that test.
I've never heard of it.
But since I just found that out, I'm going to offer that to all my neighbors. I'm going to walk around with a voltmeter in the middle of the night. Once that fluid reaches 3% moisture, the boiling point has fallen to 140 degrees Celsius. This is referred to as the wet boiling point. Just know, how often should you change your brake fluid? Well, I tell you to have that little test done every oil service. There are variables depending on .4, 5, or 6. That's the synthetic arrangement of your particular vehicle. So owner's manual may dictate a different time. We like to test it every time. We don't want to take check because guess what changes, people? What if you or someone else left the cap slightly open?
To the brake fluid,
Guess what's happening?
air,
Oxygen.
Yep.
Right. So would that change the interval? Yes. If you come in and say, no, I don't need it, it's 30,000 miles, we still got to check it because if somebody left that cap. So always during that oil change. We got a Jeopardy question. Justin, hit the band is with us. Go ahead. Well, shoot. I just gave you the answer.
That's what I said. It was supposed to be a Jeopardy question.
I gave it away. Sorry. Bad radio, dude.
That's right. It's a daily double.
All right. The question was, let's see if you were listening. Testing brake fluid for the presence of moisture can be measured with a voltmeter. True or false?
It's Greg's turn.
What kind of vehicle is it?
Is it true or false? This is an easy one.
What kind of
brother.
vehicle is it?
It's a Ukrainian tank that has
It's
any
an EV.
vehicle.
What is true?
It's an EV.
Anyway, you guys had heard that. So anyway, just remember that. Get it checked. And yes, personally, I haven't tried the voltmeter thing.
We should try it.
Yeah,
The test strips work really well.
Yeah.
Why? Because then I can attach that to a photo and do like a before and after.
Show and tell.
And make sure people are cool with it. All right, speaking of coolant. Is your Kia, Justin, is it filled with antifreeze? Do you know of this situation at this point in time?
I believe so.
The gauge seems fine.
is in the middle.
He says, and that's a good thing. A lot of you will do that. You're like, well, I don't need to go in the mechanic because my gauges seem to be all comfy and cozy.
Okay.
So I'm going to use what my brother says. My brother's an over-the-road trucker. He says run to failure. A lot of these trucking outfits, not all, do not proactively maintain. Now, they'll follow some guidelines,
Right.
but some of those truckers and you driving that Kia will run to failure.
But that's an expensive failure.
It is. But my point is, you are looking at your gauges. Nothing's broken.
Right.
Well, how do you keep it from breaking? How do you keep yourself from cavities? You maniacs, you brush your teeth. It's the same with fluids. Susie, you've seen some situations with coolant.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's like, coolant is like blood in your arteries, man.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't have enough of it, or if it's aged, it's a problem.
Yes.
Can you tell the people, Susie, what does engine coolant do?
It actually, so the cooling system serves like 3 important functions. It removes excess heat from the engine.
I don't like to be hot.
Right. Second, it maintains the engine operating temperature where it works most efficiently.
Happy motor.
And let's see. And finally, it brings the engine up to the right operating temperature as quickly as possible.
Well, that's another concept a lot of you may be experiencing. We've seen it in the garage. It can happen. Age coolant, and you get a check engine light.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not getting up to operating temperature, and that changes fuel trim and things like that. But the 2 basic things is to keep that motor cool, or for that matter, if you're in a high country, if you have water in your radiator without any antifreeze, it will freeze. It happened to me firsthand when I was a dingback young technician. I drove this Thunderbird up to the high country, and the following morning it was drag starting. I pulled the radiator cap like a big shot, and there was ice slushy.
Ice slushy.
Pour
Oh,
some
my.
food coloring, and we got a slushy, a 7-Eleven slushy right now.
Now, on the opposite side, when you're in extreme heat, water kind of evaporates, right? I mean, it doesn't freeze, but it will dissipate.
It's all about that boiling point. You know, water, X amount of boiling point. You should, as a rule of thumb, and a lot of the pre-mixed stuff, it'll be 50-50. I will say this, what's advanced, if you're parked somewhere and you see like pink or blue, you're like, man, I've never seen pink or blue fluid. This must be an alien or something.
Isn't there a difference between the pink and the blue?
There is. My point is,
Yeah.
it comes with there are many different colors.
There are.
And I will share with you, some of us used to have kind of like this universal coolant, but we reverted back to just keeping factory coolant. So we went from 1 or 2 blends to like a multitude of blends.
Yeah, so I know like Asian vehicles, it pink, right? And then what's another one?
Well, Toyota red.
Yep,
Europeans, I've seen blue.
blue. Mm-hmm.
Just know if you got a wonderful looking, bright kaleidoscope of colors underneath your ride, it's probably going to be that antifreeze. I mean, we went from green to fancy, Yeah, we got fashionable. I think the cooling system engineers got bored. They just wanted to make a little bit more of a statement. They got fashionable with the colors.
And and don't forget, it is poisonous to animals.
Well, I was going to do the Jeopardy question.
Yeah,
Are
is that
you
a
ready?
Jeopardy question?
In regards to animals. Are you
Okay.
ready? Hit it up, baby. All right, here we go. Antifreeze can kill cats only when drinking a large amount, like a pint, a gallon, or above. True or false?
What is false?
Well, how big's the cat?
You stop.
That's a good question.
You stop.
If you said, well, Frank, if it's an 800-pound lion, or whatever, lions are more than that.
Depends how big the cat is.
Will a cat have to drink a lot of this antifreeze?
No. A cat just has to drink a little bit, right?
You're right. I want you to be aware of this. A lot of you working in your driveway while your spouse is yelling at you over some cracked 6-pack of beer, whatever you're doing. Even a relatively small amount can prove lethal to these cats. 1 teaspoon.
Ugh.
Some of you got a whole pile of antifreeze sitting there by the drain on the street. You're like, to dry up and go away.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful, man. Be careful.
Yep.
We need our cats.
We do need our cats.
I'm not a fan of cat, but I don't want to go out there.
It's
and
still a
give them
living
antifreeze.
thing.
Yeah. The cat specifically will have a problem within 24 hours. And if you don't treat it, it's going to have fatal issues to that world-famous kidney it really needs.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that, just a spoonful of antifreeze. So please, if you are draining your coolant system, contain it. All your parts stores, they have these little buckets. You can actually go out and buy at Home Depot, get one of those concrete buckets so it's really wide, slide it under the car. We don't need any fluids in our environment, people.
Save the cats.
Save the cats. All right, we're going to move on to the world-famous power steering fluid. Some of you have been told, well, you need a power steering flush. That's a big deal.
Yep.
Greg, if your power steering fluid is aged a little bit, I imagine you may have some morning sickness with the steering. Well, that's what we call it. At least that's what I call it.
That's what you call it, Frank.
I don't think that's a technical question or a statement. But what you will experience, and I've seen this, especially as the weather changes, it gets a little cooler. You got a little stiff steering in the morning. I call it morning sickness. It seems to get better during the day, and you're freaked out. A lot of you freaked out like, this is major. I'm not going to see these people. I'm going to wait for it to fix itself. That's one concept people have.
Yeah.
It'll get better by itself.
Yep.
So we kind of give you the good news and tell you, hey, it just needs this teeth cleaning of a flush for whatever, $80, $100, depending on the vehicle. Or if you're inclined, you want to do it yourself, you can do that. But power steering fluid is important for the safety. Now, this does kick it up notches for your advisor, your local mechanic, dealer type, because guess what? Like brake fluid, it's safety. How would you like to have your steering really lock up in a turn on an intersection with 8 buses waiting at you
Yeah, not
in the
fun.
opposing direction?
No, that sounds more like a bad alternator. I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, anything. In fact, that whole intersection thing, you talk about really having your heart drop down to your little toe on your foot. Power steering fluid, take it serious. And it's not an expensive ordeal. I've seen neglected fluid cause lots of money in repairs between the power steering pump and the steering gear. So if they mention power steering fluid, you can ask for a test sample. You can test it and follow the owner's manual as to when it's replaced. But again, if you want to put a mechanic out of business, like your local dentist, stop brushing your teeth.
That's right. Now, what color
or
is
start brushing your teeth, I should say.
Yeah. Now, what color is power steering fluid?
Yeah, it can be clear. If it's really dirty, it can have a little brownish tint. That's a good question. And here's another one. You mentioned it last week. And, I'll be honest, we've had mud on our face, and maybe the technician was too quick, and he just did a mileage recommendation without looking. Some systems do not have hydraulic. It's electric.
Yep.
So that fluid, you don't have to spend any money.
It's not serviceable.
No such thing.
No.
No such a thing. So remember that power steering fluid is a major link between the steering wheel and the front wheels and the peace of mind, safety, to everything. If you're going to plan a honeymoon and your power steering fluid is not legitimate, your honeymoon will not work out.
That's pretty funny.
Oy vey.
Here's some other symptoms. Bubbles in your power steering fluid. Some of you have that. It's aerating and it'll whine.
Yes.
Now, a lot of you are like, I don't want to know anything. It's not my business, but I'm hearing the whine. It's aerating. It could be low. You may have a leak. Take the leak serious. Now, some of you adding the fluid, you come in and everything's wet underneath. It looks like Exxon Valdez underneath your car. We look at it and you look at us like we're crazy. And we see like 8 gallons of power steering fluid in the trunk. Well, we know you're topping it off.
Something, yeah.
You're topping it off.
Yep.
I get it. Stuff can be expensive, especially if you got a vehicle that's just like next week, I'm getting rid of it. Or it's going to disappear. Uncle Louie is going to make that sucker disappear.
Hey, you know what? I have a technical question on fluids since we're talking about it. I have heard that brake fluid and power steering fluid are the same components.
Yeah, so Hydro Boost, which works together, I can think of GM right off the bat, are intertwined, but they're specific. Hydro Boost systems, in fact, you can have a combination of a real funky pedal, like you can really feel it, like it wants to kick back at you, not like an ABS stop.
Right.
And so Hydro Boost systems that are intertwined with steering, and so it's like a 2-for-1 kind of thing.
Got it.
Most of your big trucks. I'm not sure why. I'm sure it has to do with the engineering and loads, and it was just better.
Sure.
You'll find that if you load your vehicle on an aged standard hydraulic power steering system, when you're pushing the envelope of load and steer on a hill, there's more pressure. That power steering pump's going to be singing a little bit. It's going to be, it's telling you it's a little mad. I mean, that could be an indication too that your hydraulic pump is weak and aged. After all, it's designed to produce the pressure like your heart. And so some of you may, well, forget it. You don't know if the fluid, you just bought a vehicle, but you do notice that, man, this steering just doesn't feel right. One thing I'd advise too, because that's a great question you bring up. And Susie, I think you'll agree, there's a big controversy, and that's whether you buy an aftermarket hydraulic part or you have to go and buy factory. I will tell you from my experience, especially Honda, and you guys are not going to like this because it's expensive.
Uh-oh.
To replace a power steering pump on a Honda can get expensive if you use Honda parts. Some of you, you'll get a quote, $600 to $800, whatever it is. I may not be right. It could be off. And what's the first thing you do? You do exactly the opposite of the thing that we told you last show. I invite you to look at that. Be careful on price. You call around and the price sounds good and it's less. Well, is it truly less if you have to go back into the shop because inferior parts dictated you had to go back in 2 months?
Oh,
then
yeah.
on top of it, you may get a story or two, some backpedaling. So from our experience in the garage, Susie, hydraulic parts are really sketchy with aftermarket. So you may see a bit more. Now, if you said to us, hey, I'm getting rid of it tomorrow, then yeah, we'll still give you a warranty on an aftermarket. But if that's your baby and you're going to keep it, I would rather that you save the money, maybe pull some credit, do something.
Do it the right
to
way.
buy the long distance. Now, on some occasions, these Honda power steering pumps can also be rebuilt. It does get questionable if you tear it down and the shaft is etched and it's just not rebuildable, which is an inexpensive reseal kit. We used to rebuild everything back in the day. So just keep that in mind. Hydraulic parts can be sketchy aftermarket. And my aftermarket people hate me right now, but it is what it is because they come in the garage, Susie, and it hurts us.
But it is the truth.
We want to save people money. We go after
Absolutely.
the aftermarket. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Now, here's another thing to keep in mind to keep this fair and balanced. We got a few minutes remaining, and we're going to talk about the world famous windshield washer fluid. Some of you laughing, I don't need that. That's not safety. You'd be surprised.
Right.
In some occasions, the service facility will change a power steering pump, but didn't ensure that they got all the contaminated fluid out. The same with antifreeze. If you're not, let's say you get a radiator gig, you need a radiator, you need to replace it. If that technician isn't doing a whole dialysis, in other words, they're not exchanging every ounce of the old, you could be back in the shop.
Yeah.
So you as a consumer, what can you say? Well, I mean, in a nutshell, are you doing everything you need to do the job right? That way you're not insulting anyone. I don't think that's insulting anyone.
Yeah, it's not.
And what's your warranty? And what does that back up, right? So there you go. All right, we got a few minutes remaining, and I figure we cannot forget the most important thing, and I'll tell you why. Well, maybe not the most important, but certainly high on the list. Some of you don't even think about it. Windshield washer fluid. A lot of you are going to get your oil change, and it's in your head. Everything's fine. They topped off all my fluids. Is this true or false? Should you play this Jeopardy? Get it up there.
Yeah.
Play the Jeopardy. Here's the Jeopardy question regarding fluids, which ties into windshield washer fluid. You ready?
Is this Final Jeopardy?
Final. This is it. You get a big prize.
Right.
You get a Wrench Nation coloring book. Signed. All right, so windshield washer fluid is the only fluid you should be topping off because it is consumable. Is this true or false? Greg,
What is
I'm
false?
going to put you. All right. Susie, you'll agree.
Yes.
Is this true?
What was the question? No, because you don't want to top off
He
fluids.
threw you off.
Yeah, you don't
He threw
wanna-
you off. See,
I said it
think-
with conviction.
Yeah.
You did. It made it sounded maybe.
But you don't wanna arbitrarily
Let me
top
re-ask
off.
the question because we confused everybody, or at least Frank did. Is windshield washer fluid the only fluid that should be topped off, or should you top off all fluids?
What is true to the only? It should be
Fluid.
the only fluid topped off.
All right. Now, a lot of you have a hard swallow on there. Like, man, I'm shutting this stupid show off. These people, they're not
Thanks
even
a lot,
mechanics. They're not mechanics.
That was great.
Let me explain. Valuable stuff, people, because if not, you're being blinded. A lot of you are accustomed to hearing, and I'll call out professionally those places that say, oh, yeah, we topped off all your fluids. There's two things only, and I'll explain why, should be topped off. That lonely spare tire in the back should be checked and topped off. Your tires should be topped off, and your washer fluid. Tires will change with temperature, so they'll fluctuate up and down. We're getting ready for the warmer season. You're going to see an increase in pressure. They may have to let some air out. Vice versa in the winter. Washer fluid you use, so it has to be topped off.
Mm-hmm.
Brake fluid. Are you using brake fluid to a point where brake fluid needs to be topped off?
No.
Absolutely not, people. Those fluids, consider them sealed, done deal, unless two things. You got consumption, an external leak, or an internal leak.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they topped off my brake fluid. You may have an issue. Brake fluid, there's a minimum and maximum. If that brake fluid starts getting down to minimum and someone topped it off to the maximum, you just masked the problem. The fluid should not, there's no consumption of fluid. Get it out of your head. Washer fluid only is the fluid. I've had people come in the garage. Well, Frank, I don't think you're doing your job. You didn't top off my fluids. Well, I will top off your fluids, but if they're low, other than the washer, I'm going to tell you, we got something going on.
And you know what? That's a common request. Hey, I'm going on a road trip. Can I swing in and you just top off my fluids?
We have branded, the industry has branded the consumer, you got a valuable service. We topped off all fluids. But that's the reality, people. If your brake fluid is low, in your mind, you're like, I don't care what he says, just top it off. There's a reason why it's low. It should not be low. Transmission fluid should not be low. Engine coolant should not be low. Some of you see the low, you see the minimum and maximum, figure, all right, well, it's evaporating. No, man, these are sealed systems. So we will certainly top off, but we are not going to do that without advising you. We may have something going on. Now, if we don't see anything, we're not trying to sell you stuff. We just feel like maybe there's an issue. Let's recheck it in 2 to 4 weeks, or we'll have you keep an eye on it. Washer fluid is the only fluid. Here's another thing about washer fluid that's important to know, and it's a good question. I don't know if you've had this in the garage, but I've had it asked of me. And washer fluid doesn't cost you much, right? You know, like other fluids, they start going up in price. Can I use Windex as washer fluid in my ride? Cleans my home windows fine.
I'm guilty of that.
What? And you're a car guy.
Yep, pretty much.
Now, some of
I've
you
done
got
it, not
Now, if
gonna lie.
you're like, I don't care. I drive a 72 Chevy pickup.
Right.
All right, but if you, the Windex includes chemicals that could damage the washer system. And I will tell you, because washer fluid, we just like, oh, that's so minuscule. It shouldn't cost much. I've had ridiculous estimates to replace washer pumps because your little spigots don't work. They don't spray.
Yep.
I mean, it comes complete as a reservoir assembly.
Yep.
It's like 4 foot long. It travels the distance of the fender. It
Yep.
has like a freaking 50-gallon reserve, like you use that. I mean, it's just crazy. And so what will happen is with these chemicals, specifically ammonia, will dry out the rubber.
Oh, yeah.
So no. Now, if you want to do a YouTube video and prove me wrong,
Well, I've seen it actually deteriorate the bottle itself and then
Oh, yeah.
crack the bottle.
Oh, yeah.
Windex is big time. That's
yeah,
like,
I've seen that too.
I mean, it's like my big fat Greek wedding. He says spray Windex on everything, right? Didn't he say
That's
that?
right, he did.
You got meatloaf stain?
Yep.
Windex.
Yep.
You bleeding on your pinky? Windex.
That's awesome.
But yeah, people be aware of that. And then lastly, transmission fluid, actually. I don't think we covered. Did we cover
We didn't cover transmission.
Cover it. Be careful. What I have to say, transmission fluid is you will probably be advised periodically, study your owner's manual as to the intervals. But that transmission fluid is very important. And the key there is if it's black and burnt, it's neglected. The industry may argue this, but I'm just speaking from my experience. You could go to a point of no return.
Yes.
In other words, transmission fluid is like a detergent. Your transmission clutches, they're fibrous cotton-like. Let's just call it that way. And if your transmission is working a certain way and it's gummed up with this old fluid, we remove that fluid. We put this new fluid in, which is got cleansing properties along with hydraulic to make the thing shift properly. We can actually wipe out the clearances between those clutches, create different pressure, and you now have a problem.
Transmission problem.
It happened to me at the dealership. I had a trans service that was dispatched, and I did it. I couldn't get the car to leave my bay. It would not shift into
Aw.
drive. And they all knew about it. They toyed with me all day. I'm like, man, I'm going to lose my job. My wife was pregnant. I'm like, just getting started. But that's what happened. That's a classic sign. So I'd rather preach to you on the extreme so you can ask that intelligent question. Some of you will cure a symptom, slight shift issue with a good old teeth cleaning the transmission fluid. Read the owner's manual. They'll give you the dictation on that. Did I miss anything?
No, but I'm going to add something to transmission.
Yes.
So there are more and more transmissions that are CVTs, the continuous variable transmissions. Those vehicles actually need a lot more love transmission.
Well, I'll be quite frank with you. A lot of you driving the Nissan have the CVT. I think the CVT is going away, I believe.
I don't disagree.
I don't think so. I think,
I could be wrong.
I mean, you got Subaru, Toyota.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think CVT was a win. CVT was just highly prone to failure. You guys can Google safely, not while you're driving, but if you're buying a Nissan Rogue, Nissan Sentra, CVTs have been notoriously an issue. Big difference. CVT fluid, in theory, is supposed to be set it and forget it, is my understanding. But I do get nervous with the CVT. You see in the shop, the interval's what, 60,000?
Yeah, and then every 30,000 thereafter. It's
I
like,
see.
yeah, you
It
do
is
it
same.
at 50 and then every 30.
A lot of you don't even know what a CVT is. We're not going to get into the specifics on that. Just know, before you go in to get your vehicle serviced, as a guideline, it's not the end-all cure-all, but that little book, that maintenance manual, that's so important. You learn so much.
Yep.
You will be a rocket scientist when you're done. A lot of you are not doing that. Or just reach out to us. You can reach out to us on wrenchnation.tv if you have any questions, or any of us social, Twitter, Facebook. We're out there. Susie has one more.
I have one more thing. Do you remember last week the weird automotive news about the Tesla steering wheel that
Falling
came
off.
off?
Yeah.
So there's an update today.
What happened?
Elon replaced the vehicle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I understood is the guy went on a Twitter. And
He did.
He did a Twitter poll.
Yeah.
Should I keep it, let them fix it, or should I get another one? You know what Twitter said.
Right.
Change this. Get a new one.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Elon Musk did honor that.
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. This
Fair
is
enough.
a happy ending.
It's a good one.
Thank you, Mr. Musk. We hope you enjoyed some of these tips. I'm sure you have more questions. Please, if you missed bits and pieces of the show, you got it late, you can catch the podcast. Or please, if you're so inclined, our little teensy weensy Wrench Nation YouTube, that's up there too. If you want to watch a little YouTube action, we try to stay consistent with our YouTube channel. So thank you so much, Mr. Greg Ovis. Have an amazing week. Thank you for stopping
absolutely.
by.
Thank you.
And Susie Sockets, I love you, girl. Thank you.
Love you too, guys.
Always a good time. Justin, thank you for monitoring the switches and the handles and all those buttons. And you were great at the Jeopardy. You were so in tune.
Yes.
Be safe.
Who won?
Hug each other.
Yeah,
And
right?
never forget to hug a mechanic.